Okay, I hope now it's getting recorded. So, yes, coming to Anypoint MQ. So, Anypoint MQ is a messaging service that is provided by MuleSoft that is fully integrated with our Anypoint platform. So, it comes up with features like management console, which is directly on the Anypoint platform UI that will help us more. It helps us. It's more user friendly kind of thing. Then also it supports advanced asynchronous and real-time messaging patterns with queuing and then exchange techniques. And it also has circuit breaker patterns. It supports circuit breaker patterns in error handling scenarios as well. So coming to advantages of MQ, the first thing is queues and message exchanges. So queues we can use when we have to communicate with point to point. Like we have one source and when we have one consumer, we can use a queue, like the standard queues that we have. And then we have message exchanges. So this comes into picture when we have something called publisher subscriber mode, where you will have to publish a message and it has to be consumed by multiple subscribers. So you can create something called exchange where you will push it to one queue, which internally pushes to all your consumers. Like we'll have different queues to which it can push the same message. So that's possible with Anypoint MQ. Then, as I mentioned, the management console. So we have a management console that is coming up on the Anypoint platform UI, which helps us to know, like we can see how many messages are in flight. If we want to purge a message, then we can retrieve the number of messages. Like you can have up to 50 messages being displayed on the UI. So that's management console. Then you can see the statistics, like how many requests were sent. So that's also again available. Then out of the box connectivity. So out of the box connectivity is like we have Anypoint MQ connector that's available from the MuleSoft, which will help us to connect with any applications that are deployed either on Cloud Hub or that can be used in hybrid mode or even on premise. So we can connect to any application using that connector. Then the MQ also comes up with REST APIs. So in case if you don't want to use connectors or if there are applications which are not deployed on Mule, it is something outside the Mule, we can still connect to these MQs. So you can use this Anypoint MQ REST APIs for connecting to non-Mule applications. They come up with three different APIs like administration API, then the broker API, and statistics API. So administration API will help you to manage the accesses that are there for your MQ. Then your broker API helps with all the performing operations of the MQ. And the statistics API will help you give all the statistics of the MQ. Other than this, we have something called environment and role-based access. So Anypoint MQ, right, it is fully integrated with our Anypoint access management. So for like we have runtime managers, right, different environments and different accesses that are there. So for MQ also, we can manage that access and role based on the environment. So organization administrator can have the access, like they can provide restricted access to restricted people, and they will have the control like what perform actions they can do on each environment. And relevant matrices, again, getting the usage of MQ on Anypoint platform is easy now because the organization administrators, they can go to access management page where we can retrieve the full API usage, like how many messages were sent, then how many API requests were sent. So all those things can be retrieved on the access management page of the Anypoint platform. Whether it is for the current month or the previous month, you'll get a monthly statistics as well. So that helps us in analyzing like how many requests we are receiving and what is our traffic control through the MQ. Then client management. So we can create specific client specific tokens or the what do you say apps for connecting to the MQs. So you can keep it specific to your client, which will ensure your securities. And then coming to large payloads. So MQ supports payloads of up to 10 MB per hit. So that's the maximum size that is supported, and it supports payloads of the format JSON, then CSV, XML, and strings, of course. So if you're trying to send in the payloads in any other format other than these, the MQ will try to convert them to a string and then push to the MQ. There are chances that when it converts other payload like other formats to string, it can exceed 10 MB sometimes. So that has to be taken care while you are pushing to the MQ, that it should not exceed the limit. And other than that, we have, as I mentioned, that we have message browser on the Anypoint platform, right, where we can retrieve the messages. So if you have to see the payload on your UI, it has to be less than 1 MB. Otherwise, it's not seen on the UI. But if you want to retrieve the messages even more than 1 MB, you can still use your REST APIs, the broker API, as I mentioned. So that can be used if you want to retrieve the entire payload. Then the reliability and disaster recovery. So Anypoint MQs, right, by default, they'll be deployed to multiple availability zones in one region when we are creating it. So suppose if one availability zone goes down, automatically we have another availability zone coming up. So this ensures high availability of MQs. But however, if we have to use cross-region failover, like suppose your entire region is down. So, like as of now, standard queues enable that. Like they have the feature of cross-region failover. Suppose if your entire region is down, all the availability zones are down. Then we can give a fallback region and a fallback queue that comes up. So once the entire thing is down, then it relies on the fallback one. But again, this is an optional feature. So if you enable it manually, then only that happens. If you don't enable, if all the availability zones are gone, your MQ is not working. But the advantage of MQ is still that once your one of the availability zone comes up, you will still have the messages retained. Your messages are not lost. So there's no data loss. That is one thing about the disaster recovery. Then secure encrypted queues. So you can encrypt your queues, and MQ use HTTPS TLS 1.2 protocol while your messages are being transported. And also you can even encrypt your data and push it to queues. That is also one method of securing the data. But if you are encrypting the data, then managing the keys on the publisher end and the consumer end is with up to us. So these are the major advantages of using Anypoint MQ. So coming to the options, as I mentioned, we have queues and exchanges. Queue is the standard queue where it doesn't guarantee the order of delivery. Like you will push it to the queue, you can receive it in any order when you are consuming it. But you will have also an option to create a FIFO queue where it guarantees the delivery in order. Like the first in will be retrieved the first. And then along with it, we have exchange where we can use that for the publish subscribe model where we are pushing a message to a queue, and then that in turn pushes to different queues which are consumed by different people. That is the exchange pattern that is available. So this is the out-of-box connectivity connector that is being provided by MuleSoft. We have 5 components in this: the publish, subscriber, then the consumer, acknowledgement, and NAC. So publish component, it's obvious that used to publish the message to a queue. Then receiving, that has 2 things. One is subscriber, one is consumer. So subscriber is used when you want to start an event as soon as the message is put into the queue. You want to start your event flow when you are putting the message. That is asynchronous, like you're not waiting for any scheduler or anybody to come and call your flow. So it will trigger the event on its own. That's when you use a subscriber. But consumer is used when you want to retrieve the message from a queue in between an operation or an event. You have started your flow, In between, you require the value from the MQ, then you can use consume and fetch the value from the. So last two, this acknowledgement and NAC. So this comes into picture when based on the acknowledgement modes that are available with subscriber and consume. So there are three acknowledgement modes. So there are three acknowledgement modes that come up with the subscriber and consume. The first one being auto. So when we give auto as our acknowledgement mode, what happens is we give a default acknowledgement timeout. So when a message is pushed to the queue and it's consumed by the subscriber or a consume, it waits for that particular amount of time to receive the acknowledgement back from the flow. Suppose we did not receive the acknowledgement back within that period of time, then it pushes that message for a redelivery, like it is being retried again. So that is auto acknowledgement mode. And the second acknowledgement mode being immediate. So immediate is when, again, it waits for the certain acknowledgement timeout that is specified. But if it is not receiving any acknowledgement, it just removes the message from the queue. So it does not guarantee you that whether the message was successfully processed or it was not processed. It just waits for that particular period of time and then removes the message from the queue. So that's immediate mode. And coming to the last one, that is manual mode. That's where you have the control with yourself. So when it comes to manual mode, the MQ sends the message with an acknowledgement token in its attributes. So it is with us. We can control the acknowledgement or NAC in this. So once we have the entire process completed, if we feel that the message is successfully processed, then we can go ahead, use the acknowledgement token and accept that it is successfully completed, use ACK and remove it from our queue. Suppose we feel that it's not completed, or suppose there are some connectivity errors or something happens in between and you don't want to remove that message from the queue, you use an ACK, which means that it notifies the queue that it has to attempt one more delivery to the same message. So that's why we use the ACK and NAC. So that's with the theory part. Now let me take you through the demo. Okay, so let me first go to the platform. People virtually, you are able to see my screen, right? Okay, so this is how your Anypoint MQ console looks like when you have nothing created. You can see, like our runtime manager, we have different environments here. Right now, I'll be putting it to sandbox. And here we have the client apps. So here we have the client apps where we can create our client credentials that we will be using for connectivity in the studio. So here I've already created one. And coming to destinations, here you can see these are the regions. Okay. So one more thing is MQ is as of now available only in these regions. It's not available across all the regions in the Anypoint platform. It's only these specific regions that you can see here that it's available. I'll just leave it to US East for now. And here you can see this plus sign. If you click on that, you can see the three things that I mentioned, the standard queue, then the exchange and FIFO queue. So let's go ahead and create a queue here. I'll make this as test queue. Here you can mention the default TTL, like how many days you want that message to be there before it's being completely removed. Suppose there's no consumer, there's no subscriber listening to this particular queue. What is the maximum time that you want to retain that message in the queue? And then here, as I mentioned, default acknowledgement timeout, it says 2 minutes by default. This can be varied. You can change it as per your convenience. Then we have something called assign default delivery delay. So if you switch on this, here it will ask for the delivery delay that you want. Like usually what happens, as soon as you publish the message, you are consuming it or subscribing it. Like it's usually readily available for the consumer or subscriber. Suppose you want to put some delay before that's being available for the consumers. There are situations like you don't want that to be consumed immediately. You want it to be consumed like after 15 minutes or 10 minutes based on the scenarios or the use cases. You can use this. As of now, I don't require this, so I'll just keep it disabled. Encryption, you can encrypt the queue. Here we can turn on encryption, but then when we are later retrieving the details or the payload from the MQ, right, it will still be visible. It will be encrypted. But since we are viewing it on the UI, it will be visible as it is for us. So I'll keep this on for now. Okay. And there is something called a dead letter queue mechanism in MQ. Suppose you give the, so when I enable this, I think I need to first create a dead letter queue, then it will allow me to enable. So I'll keep it off for now. I'll come back to this later. So, and then there is something called enable cross region failover. So I was mentioning, right, if you want a fallback region or a fallback queue that has to be there, so then you can enable this, create a queue in that particular environment and bind them together. I'll keep this off for now as well. So So this is how the UI looks like. You can purge the messages here. Then you can see how many messages are in queue. Then how many are in flight. And then the details, everything here. And if you click on this queue, here you can see message sender. So this is one more advantage. You can send your messages to the queue using your Anypoint platform UI, which is not supported in other forms of queues, right? Usually. So this is one more advantage where you can send your payload through the queue through the UI. And this is the message browser. So it says here you can retrieve up to 50 messages. That's the maximum you can retrieve on the platform. Okay, so now we have created this queue. Let me show you how to configure the Anypoint MQ credentials on the studio. Let me expand this. So for configuring MQ on the studio, you require a URL, then the client app ID and the client secret. So URL, you can get it from here. So if you see, it will ask what is your connector version. If it is 4x and later, you will take one. If it is 3x and later, you will take the other one. So my version currently is, I'll show you the version as well. You can see here, this is 4.0.7. So it is 4x and later. That's why I'll have to select for the first one. Then it automatically gets copied onto your clipboard and you can paste that URL here. Then the other things are the client app ID and the secret. So that, as I showed, you will get it here. You will get the app ID, app secret here. So that you will paste it and that's it. So you're good to use your Anypoint MQ. So now for the first use case, I'm just trying to publish a payload. So I'm trying to publish an array one by one so that I want to show you that it is not retrieved in the order that we publish. So I'll just be pushing 5 different elements to the MQ, which I'll be consuming. Consumer, I have used only one. I don't want to consume everything as of now. I'll just consume only one. So let me just add breakpoints here and then debug this. Just a moment, it's getting deployed. Okay, so now it's deployed. I'll just come here, take my publish. So I'll try to publish it one by one here. So here you can see in publish, you need not give anything except your destination queue name. This is the queue that I just created. And if required, you can pass your correlation ID as user properties. Not just correlation ID, whatever the properties you require, you can pass them as part of your user properties. So I'll just publish them to the queue. I'll just finish this off. Okay, so this is done. Now if we go to our UI and check our queue, you can see we have 5 messages in queue. And since my payloads are very small, I can still go ahead and get them through the UI as well. I think it takes some time. Yes. So you can see I have all my 5 payloads here. So now I'll go ahead and I just want to consume one of them, just the latest payload. I'll just come back here, go to my consume. So I have got my control here. I'm consuming the very first message from the queue. Okay. It gave a timeout error. Let me hit it again.
You need to exit from.
Yeah, correct. So one more thing is you have to exit from here, otherwise you will not be able to listen to your messages in the code. Come out of this.
Why you will exit?
It's like consume listens to only one particular person or a client. So if it is open on UI, it's considered as one client who is viewing the messages or reading, trying to read the messages. Just finish this. I'll try hitting it again now. So now you can see that I got the message immediately. Since I've closed it on the UI, I've got the message immediately here. So I've just retrieved the first message. So this is how you can use consume. And here you can see that the configuration is you will give your queue name, then the acknowledgement mode. Here I've just mentioned immediate because I want to just read it and then remove it. I don't want to wait for it to be processed or anything. Then yes, so these are the configurations that you will provide for a consume connector. Now let me show you how to subscribe it. I'll just uncomment the subscribe flow. Okay. Let this just comment this consume as well because we don't want two particular operations listening to the same queue. Let's just wait a second to get this deployed. Okay, so the app is started. Now, I'll just add a breakpoint here. Let me see if our messages are still okay. The messages have been defaulted. So since there's no dead letter queue, it's automatically been removed. Now I will push the messages again to the queue. I'll just play this part because we know that it's just pushing the messages to the queue. So now you can see I have added a subscriber here. I am automatically getting the message immediately just after it got pushed because I've not added any delivery delay there. So if you see the payload I've received is 3, but what I pushed first was 1. I have pushed it in the order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But the one which I've received here is 3, which means that order is not guaranteed in the standard queues. So since I have used autoflow here, it waits for that particular time, 2 minutes. If it is not getting responded, then it will return back for a redelivery. So now this is getting consumed. Now you can see the payload did not come in the same order and it's complete. Now we don't have any more payloads in our queues. So this was with a standard queue. Now I was mentioning about a dead letter queue, right? So, okay, before we go that, let's finish off with the FIFO queue as well. Let's now try to create a FIFO queue. So here you'll have to select FIFO queue. I'll just use the same name that I used to publish here. Again, I'll just leave all these default as it is. And you can see that there's no cross-region failover option at all present for a FIFO queue. So it's not present for FIFO queues. And before I move to FIFO queue, one more thing I forgot to mention. So in a standard queue, right, in flight, we can have maximum up to 1,20,000 messages at a time. So that's the maximum that standard queues allow. And coming to the TPS, that is transaction per second, there's no limit on the standard queues. But in the FIFO queues, in flight, we can have maximum up to 10 messages. That's it, because it has to maintain order and it has so much complexities with respect to the order, right? So it requires a less amount of in-flight messages rather than the standard queue. And also coming to the TPS, again here it allows maximum of 300 transactions per second. So there are limitations with FIFO queues. So I'll just create this FIFO queue. I have not encrypted my queue. It's an option, so I have not encrypted this queue. Again, here also you can purge the messages. You can view how many are in flight, how many are in queue or in flight. Then I'll come here. My application is already running, so I'll just go ahead, push to the FIFO. So before I do that, okay, I have added the thing. Okay. So here you can see I'm pushing it in order again. 1, which is a string. Then 2 is again a string. But 3 is an integer that I'm pushing. Then 4, which is a string. And 5, again a string. This exits. And it should come here. And one more thing. Now, each flow has something called max concurrency, right? So, for whenever you are using FIFO queues, if you don't give max concurrency as 1, we know MuleSoft supports multi-threading. So, the messages from queue, they start pushing to the threads, and there's no guarantee that it will come in the order that we pushed. So to ensure that it will come in the same order, we need to set this max concurrency as 1 in the flow where we are consuming the messages. Either if you are using subscriber or the consume, max concurrency where you are consuming a FIFO queue should always be 1. Okay, so I have pushed it. I can see we have 5 messages. I did not. Yeah, not sure why it came. Let me just purge the message. So here you can, this is how you can purge the messages as well. I'll just stop the application and redeploy it once. Meanwhile, while this application is getting deployed, I want to assign a dead letter queue for my FIFO queue. Suppose my messages are not being able to be consumed even after hitting it for 2 times or the fixed number of times that you want. You want to push it to a dead letter queue so that you can come back later and see what went wrong, or you can retry it once again. So deadliner queues, for standard queue, you have to create a standard deadliner queue. For FIFO queues, you have to create a FIFO deadliner. So now I want to create for a FIFO queue. I'll just give as FIFO deadliner and rest all I'll just leave it as it is. So now I have a deadliner queue here, but I have to assign this as a deadliner queue for my first queue that I created. So you can go, once you create a queues also, you can change these settings anytime you want. It's not like while creating only you have to give everything and finish it off. If you go, if you want to assign a delivery delay later as well, that's possible. So here I'll assign a deadliner queue. So this is the queue that I just created. Here you can specify like after how many retries you want to push that message to a deadliner queue. I'll just put it as 2 so that I can show you guys how it goes to a deadliner queue.
Is it like a circuit breaker?
Circuit breaker is there. That's a different thing. This is like a deadliner where you are retrying it for a couple of times. Still, you are not able to acknowledge the message that it's processed. Then it pushes to a deadliner queue. That is still a normal queue, like a standard FIFO queue only. You will have to go ahead and check that. I mean, you have to subscribe to that again to check the messages there. There's no standard format where it retries after particular second. Like it retries the same flow or the message is sent to the same queue after a particular number of seconds or a timeout. Circuit breaker is when you will just cut the connection, wait for a certain number of time, then retry that. So that is also there. But what I'm showing right now is a deadliner queue where you are just pushing the messages that are not acknowledged. Okay, so this is deployed now. I'll just go ahead and publish to the queue again. So it's the same payload that I'm using. I'll just play this for now. So you can see I have got the message from my FIFO queue. The first message I have received is 1. And you can see there's something called act token here. That's because I have made my acknowledgement mode as manual, and you can see in your attributes there is something called act token that is there. So whenever your acknowledgement mode is manual, you will have to manually give this act token and then acknowledge or do an act. So in my use case here, as I mentioned, I've sent 4 strings and 1 number. So I have added a choice router where it has to acknowledge all the strings and it has to do an act on something else, like if the data type is different. So 1 is something that is a string, so it gets acknowledged. Then you are getting 2. It is still maintaining the order. I've got 3. So this is being nacked because this is not type string. Then now I'm getting 4 and 5. But since I've done NAC, which means it has to go to the queue again, retry for the same from the same queue. So the 3 comes again. So this time as well, it will be a NAC because still it is not satisfying the condition. So it's a NAC. And now if you see, it has to go to a dead letter queue. because we tried 2 times. After 2 times, it is still not coming. It's still the NAC. That is why we are pushing that to a dead letter and removing it from the main FIFO queue. Now, if you want to process that message again, you'll have to listen to your dead letter.
NAC retry, it happens only once, or we can set it like 4
So
times.
NAC, when you do a NAC, it just goes to the message again. I mean, the message just goes to the queue again, attempts for a redelivery. If you get NAC again, it just goes to the message again. So there's no limit on that. But limit happened because we had assigned a dead letter queue and mentioned that we need to retry for twice. After
Okay.
2 times, it has to go to a dead letter queue. If you mention it 10 times, it will try for 10 times.
So where exactly we have mentioned that retry?
So
For
here we tried not for the NAC. NAC is like you're just pushing to the queue again.
Again and again.
Yes.
It's a retry.
How many ever times you push to queue, you will retry again. How many ever times you get NAC, it will just go to the queue, come back like a fresh message.
Okay.
But this is like you don't want to keep doing that, right? If something like this where the condition never satisfies, so it will be like a never-ending loop. I will be doing that. It will be going to the queue. It will be coming again.
Okay.
So in that cases, you can just keep a minimum number of retries, and then after that, it will just push to a dead letter.
Okay, that you are telling twice we are acknowledging,
Yes.
right? So where we are doing that setting here in the
Yes, in the UI.
delivery item.
Yes. So that can be done. Okay. So that is with FIFO and the dead letter queues. Now let's create an exchange. So before creating an exchange can be done.
Sorry for interrupting.
No worries.
Now we have saved the message in dead letter. So how are we gonna consume that?
So for that, you will have to write a different flow where you will have either a subscriber or consumer listening to this queue. This is like another FIFO queue now.
Another, it's a different queue.
Yes. So
where we have like buffering.
yes. So you can just listen to that. That's like your error handling mechanism kind of thing. So these are my error out message. I can pick all my error handling or error payloads from this queue. I can do whatever I want. If it is a data invalid thing, I can just remove it from the queue. Or if it is some retry would have been confirmed, like it's not due to retry. That's when it goes to dead letter queue, right? Because you would have tried for
So
couple of
again,
times.
we can delete the. How can we delete messages from dead letter, because we wanted to
Correct.
use the dead letter there.
So dead letter queue, again, it's like a normal FIFO or a standard queue. It has same 3 acknowledgement modes.
Okay.
So if you give immediate, as soon as you listen to the queue, it doesn't care. It will just wait for that particular acknowledgement timeout and removes it from the queue. Like
in dead letter also it will
yes,
do.
dead letter is not like a special type of queue. It is a standard queue or a FIFO queue.
Okay.
We are just naming that as a dead letter queue and assigning it.
So how long the message will stay there? We have settings.
Yeah, same, similar to what we have for a normal queue. You have the message TTL and then the default acknowledgement timeout. Just how your normal queue is, this is another queue. But we are just adding that as a dead letter queue for your normal initial queue that you create.
For to take the backup with any message.
Yes.
Fee.
If you don't add that there, this is just again a normal queue which is named as dead letter.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay, so to create exchange, now I have 2 queues. I know I have FIFO queue and a standard queue, but exchanges are possible only for a standard queues. It is not possible for FIFO queues. Let me just create one more standard queue. I'll just name that as test queue 2. I'll just leave all this as it is. I'll just keep encryption on. So I have 2 queues now. Now I can go ahead and create one exchange. Just name it as test exchange. So here it will show me all the standard queues because exchange works only on standard queues. It will show me the list of standard queues that are available so that I can bind them to this exchange. Here again, you can keep encryption on or off. If you have encryption off here, irrespective of that, you can encrypt your exchange. It doesn't matter whatever the status of your standard queue is. I'll keep this off because I've anyway enabled the exchange, encryption on the other two queues. So you can see this is how exchange looks like. Here you can add any rule if you want to that particular queue. So you can specify like it has to match this particular payload or something like that. Then only it has to go to this queue. So you can specify like that. And you can any day unbind these if you don't want. So this is how an exchange looks like. Now let us try to push a message to the exchange. Just redeploy this. Not sure why hotfix is not working properly. So here I'm just publishing a message, which is just a hard-coded message exchange. So now when I push this through my code, it has to go to the first queue, test queue, and the test queue to both the queues. Step 5. Okay, now you can see that dead letter queue we had pushed a message, right? Since the code got deployed, we still had that. You can see that we are getting that payload here. The payload which was an integer, which was pushed to the dead letter queue. So that's how you can consume messages from your dead letter queue. So just remove that. Okay, now I'll push a message to my exchange. So I'm just pushing one message, like a string called exchange. And now you can see immediately this is for my test queue 2 that I had added. Okay, this is for the test queue, the initial queue that I created, the first queue. So I'm getting the message here. Which means that on the platform it has consumed from the test exchange, pushed it to the test queue already. That's why you're getting the message here when you're listening to the subscriber of the test queue. This I'll just finish it off. Okay, I forgot to add a breakpoint here, so sorry on that. Let me push it again. I just want to show it to you that it goes for both the queues. So here you can see now it has come to test queue 2. We just pushed it to the test exchange. Initially it went to test queue 1, the first queue. Now it has come to the test 2. It is the same payload still. Yeah, so now I pushed it again, right? Test 2 completed. So this is the initial queue now that has come back. So each time we push, it goes to both the queues. Whatever the
Goes
payload.
at a time or one by one?
At a time.
At a time.
Until and unless you add some delivery delay on the queues. So yeah, now I've completed. So you can see now the messages got pushed to both the queues. Both were consumed. Okay. Okay, so these were the major operations that could be performed on MQs. One more thing what I wanted to show you was the circuit breaker pattern. So in this flow, what I'm trying to do is, I'm trying to push a message to my test queue 2 that I had created. And when I'm consuming that message, I am raising an error saying that it is test error, some random error. And while configuring your MQ, if you go to the advanced section, you have something called circuit breaker settings. So this is an optional one. The previous subscribers which I had used, I had not set any circuit breaker pattern. So it doesn't act for any circuit breaker actions. But now when I'm making this as edit inline, and I can specify my type of error here. So I'm giving the same error that I've raised manually so that I can show you guys. And the threshold is like after how many times it has to switch on your circuit breaker. Like if you get that error, circuit breaker pattern is like once you get that error, specified error, it opens the circuit. It won't allow you to consume messages from those particular queue. So that is like after how many times that this error comes, you want to open the circuit, I'm giving it as 1 for now so that it's easier for me to demo. You can give a fixed number of times as per the use case. Then the trip timeout is like how long it should wait before it sends you the second message or before it can be consumed again. I've given 1 minute. I think that would be too long. Let me make it to 30 seconds. Just make this to 30 seconds for now. And let me get this. Okay, so this is deployed now. I'll just push one message to this test queue 2. And now we are getting it here. So if you see, the acknowledgement mode here, I have put it as immediate, so it will be removed immediately once it is listened. So this, as soon as I execute the error, this will stop. I'll just immediately hit one more message. I'll play this so that it's easier. Okay, 1 second. I forgot to disable this. So sorry. Since I have one more subscriber, it goes to that subscriber first. Okay, it's deployed. So I'll just play this and immediately you can see I've got the message here. Now I have an error. I'll quickly push another message to the MQ. You can see I'm not getting the message immediately now because the circuit is open. It will wait for 30 seconds before we receive the message. Let's wait for some time. So now you can see after certain amount of time, like we had given a gap of 30 seconds, now we have got the message from the queue. So that's how circuit breaker works. So yeah, I'll just play this. Okay, I think I covered major of the things that I had for the demo. So anybody have any questions either online or here? Can let line I can see Vishal has mentioned that if we browse events in the UI from a queue, those events become in-flight. So they may not be available to the application since they are polling on the set queue. As I said, that time when we had opened consume, it was open on the UI. So when we open on UI, that messages go to in-flight. So it may not be available while we are trying through the code. Yeah, Vishal.
Flight means like it come in memory.
Mm-hmm.
What is in flight? It's like
So in-flight is like it is processing. It's in process. It's in queue is like it's in queue. It's not started processing. In flight is it's in process. So for as I mentioned, for normal standard queues, we can have up to 1,20,000 in flight. There's no limitation in the queue. Like you can have how many messages you want in the queue. But in flight, you can have only 1,20,000. And for the standard queue, FIFO queue, it is 10. Yes. Any questions? Yeah.
In the first flow, you have given some user properties, right?
Uh-huh.
For relation ID. So where we can see that one?
Okay. So that part actually you can wait for the MDC logging part. She'll explain. Okay. Any other questions?
You have selected one region, right? Initially, you said US. So what is that region? It's like a point of delivery or something?
So it's like the region in which you're creating a queue, like how we have regions in AWS, right?
Okay.
So we have regions in Anypoint as well.
So what are the options available?
For MQ, we have only these set of regions that are available for now. And one major thing, MQ is not available for free. It requires a subscription from MuleSoft. And also MQ guarantees that at least once a message is hit to your consumer. That's a guarantee provided by Anypoint MQ.
You can't see from here. It is like only US or like
No. These are the regions.
China?
US, Ireland, London, Asia Pacific. We have Singapore, Sydney, Tokyo.
China, not China, right? No, I think that is a major concern when we are working with Chinese customers. So they want their point of delivery from the mainland of China. That is why I think now Salesforce is also coming with the Alibaba cloud pattern, right?
Okay.
Vandana, one small question if you don't mind.
Yes.
So basically, date letter queue, that whatever you have said,
Mhm.
is mostly to identify the issues that can happen as a
Yes.
part of the message and create the appropriate flow next time so that
Yes.
it gets processed, right?
Yes.
What a part of.
There's no different dead letter queue kind of queue.
Correct,
It's
correct,
just a
correct.
normal
To
queue.
identify the
Yes.
issues.
Yes. You had a question.
Yeah, in flight, like how about memory? I mean, you were saying some messages, right? Messages can be small, big also, right?
Mhm.
So you told me some count, right?
So 10 MB is the maximum payload that we can send through the app. For all, if all the messages are 10 MB, 1,20,000 in flight, acceptable.
So if it is, we have differences in that.
Mhm.
So can we go more than that?
No, that's the maximum limit.
That's the max. If it is less or
If it is
10
less, it is
MB,
fine. But that's the maximum limit. If it is more, probably we'll have to break it into chunks, write in your code to combine and then utilize it somehow.
come again?
If it is more than 10 MB, you might have to probably break your payload into chunks and then consume it and utilize it by combining them later, or somehow some custom logic has to be done. But as a whole, MQ supports maximum up to 10 MB. That's it.
Even though if it is less.
Yes, less,
I mean,
less it
7
is like
MB,
less
yeah.
memory. It takes less memory. But it's max 10 MB, it consumes 10. If it is less, it consumes less. So it's accordingly. Maximum is that.
So we are not utilizing that, which are not.
Yes. But that doesn't matter when you keep a count. Count is 1,20,000. Even though if your payload size is less than 10 MB, the count has to be 1,00,000.
Yeah.
Encryption part where actually it is encrypting the payload.
So encrypting can happen either at rest or while transport. When you enable encryption here, that is through the transport. It uses HTTPS TLS 1.2 protocol.
Usually it is HTTPS.
Yeah, TLS 1.2 only it uses. It doesn't use the older version. So that's the.
When we are subscribing, is there any decryption kind of?
No,
Instead of
not
using-
required. Because we are using, if you are enabling here, it is like your encryption is through while you are transporting the message. You're not encrypting the message, right? It's like while transporting, it's encrypted. But if you want to encrypt your message, you have to manually encrypt and push it to the queue. So while after you decrypt, if you have the keys, you can just decrypt and utilize it. Okay. No other questions, I believe. I think we are past the time. I'll hand it over to Amar. Yes.
Change.
Sorry. Sharing here. Guys, we'll take a quick break of 5 minutes for the people online while we are setting up the system for next.